Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder why your brain feels like it is working overtime just to understand what someone is saying in a noisy room? Well, new research dives into the surprising ways our bodies, especially our movements, might be key to unlocking that effort. Imagine trying to listen to your friend at a loud party. You probably stop moving around, right? This new study suggests that when listening gets tough, our bodies get still, and this stillness might actually be helping our brains focus. It is not just about trying harder, it is about a whole shift in how our body and mind work together. We all know that understanding speech when it is noisy or unclear takes a lot of brain power. It is like your brain is working extra hard, and scientists call this listening effort. This effort can even be a sign that your hearing might be having trouble before you even notice it yourself. But for a long time, researchers have focused mostly on what is happening in our brains and the automatic responses like our pupils getting bigger. They've kind of missed the big clue: our movements. When listening gets difficult, people naturally move less. Their eyes might become more still, they might blink less, and their head movements can decrease. This stillness isn't just a side effect, it could be an active part of how we manage to understand. So, how do we know people move less when listening is hard? Scientists have looked at eye movements. For example, they measured tiny movements our eyes make even when we're trying to focus on something. When people were listening to sentences that were harder to understand, these small eye movements, called microsaccades, actually decreased. They also looked at overall eye position, what they call gaze dispersion. When listening was difficult, gaze dispersion went down, meaning the eyes were more stable. Even blinking decreased when sentences were harder to figure out. It's not just eyes though, they also tracked head movements. When listening became a challenge, people's heads became more still, with fewer turns and adjustments. Interestingly, this happened even when the sounds were coming through headphones, so turning your head wouldn't actually help you pinpoint the sound source. It shows that this stillness is related to the listening effort itself, not just trying to orient towards a sound. Now, you might be thinking, how is this different from just looking at pupil size, which is often used to measure effort? Well, pupil size changes are linked to our arousal or excitement levels, kind of like how your pupils get big when you are surprised or alert. Eye movements, on the other hand, seem more directly tied to where our attention is focused. Sometimes, these eye movement measures can even be more sensitive to listening difficulty than pupil size, especially when the noise goes on for a while. They can track the effort more closely in time. So, while pupil size might show a general increase in effort, eye movements might show exactly when that effort is being applied. Think about when you are trying to listen in a noisy place. You might turn your head to try and get a better angle for your ears, right? This helps you hear better. But once you find that good spot, you tend to hold your head steady. This research suggests that when listening is hard, we reduce head movements because after an initial adjustment, more movement doesn't necessarily improve our ability to understand, and might even be distracting. But here is where it gets really interesting. Reduced movement doesn't always mean you are putting in maximum effort. Sometimes when things become too difficult or just not worth the trouble, we might disengage. Imagine trying to listen to a conversation where the person is speaking gibberish. You'd probably stop trying hard and your mind might wander. In one study, they tested listening to sentences that were easy, difficult, or even impossible to understand. They found that when the sentences were difficult but still understandable, people's eye movements decreased a lot, showing focused effort. But when the sentences were impossible to understand, eye movements also decreased, but in a different way. It wasn't as tightly linked to the speech itself. And it lasted longer. This suggests that when listening is impossible, people might disengage and their minds might drift into their own thoughts, which can also cause eye movements. This idea that stillness can also happen when we're thinking internally, not just when we're focusing externally on speech, makes a lot of sense. When you are daydreaming, recalling a memory, or planning something, your eyes tend to become more still too. It is like your brain is turning inwards, so the stillness we see during difficult listening is likely related to this inward focus. But it is different from the stillness that happens when you are really concentrating on extracting meaning from a challenging sound. Based on all this, the researchers proposed 3 ways we listen. First, there is casual listening. This is when speech is easy and you are relaxed, probably moving around a bit. Your eyes are scanning. Then Therese-focused listening. This is when the speech is hard, but you really want to understand it. Your brain and body gear up, your movements decrease. And this stillness is closely timed with the difficult parts of the speech. Finally, Therese disengaged listening. This happens when the speech is impossible or unrewarding. You might stop trying to listen, your movements might decrease too, but because you are zoning out or thinking about something else, not because you are actively focusing on the sound. The key difference between focused and disengaged listening is how the stillness relates to the speech. In focused listening, the stillness is like a tight dance with the difficult parts of the speech. In disengaged listening, the stillness is more continuous and detached from the actual sounds you are trying to hear. So, what is going on in the brain to make this happen? It seems like our brains have these complex networks that connect not just hearing and thinking, but also our movement systems. When we decide to really engage with difficult speech, our brain activates areas that are also involved in controlling our actions. Think of it like this. Your brain has to make a decision. Is it worth the effort to try and understand the speech? This involves weighing the difficulty against how important or interesting the speech is. If the reward is high enough and the effort seems manageable, you commit. This commitment seems to activate a network of brain areas that are also involved in planning and controlling our movements. It is like your brain is saying, okay, we're doing this, let's get ready to focus. And part of that readiness involves quieting down unnecessary movements. When we disengage, it seems a different brain network called the default mode network becomes more active. This network is usually involved when we're not focusing on the outside world, like when we're daydreaming or thinking about our past or future. And as we saw, this inward thinking can also lead to eye movement. The connection between hearing and movement is pretty deep. Your brain areas that are involved in producing speech are also activated when you are trying to understand speech, especially if it is difficult. It is like your brain is using its speech production machinery to help process what it is hearing. And there is evidence that when we move, it actually changes how our auditory system processes sounds. So, why exactly does stopping movement help us listen better? There are a few ideas. One is that moving can actually suppress or quiet down the signals in our auditory system. So by staying still, we might be turning up the volume or sensitivity of our hearing system, making it easier to pick up faint or distorted speech. Imagine you are trying to hear a whisper in a quiet room. If you are completely still, you might hear it better than if you are fidgeting around. This stillness could be helping your auditory cortex, the part of your brain that processes sound, become more responsive to the speech signals. Another idea is about keeping things stable. When we move our head, it changes the way sound reaches our ears, which can help us figure out where a sound is coming from. But if the sound is uncertain or we're already in a good listening position, further head movement might just add noise or confusion. So, holding still might be about maintaining a stable reference point for processing sound, especially when the acoustic scene is unclear. Our movements also create other sensory inputs. Eye movements create visual changes, and head and body movements create signals in our inner ear and muscles. If we're trying to focus on listening, these other sensory signals can be distracting. By reducing eye blinks, saccades, and head movements, we might be cutting down on these competing sensory inputs, allowing our brain to better focus on the speech. It is also possible that movement suppression is just a general consequence of putting a lot of mental effort into any task. When your brain is working hard on one thing, it has fewer resources left for other things, like controlling your body's movements. So, the stillness might simply be a sign that your brain is fully occupied with the demanding task of understanding speech. Now, while stillness seems beneficial, it is also possible that actively holding yourself still takes effort. If you have to consciously keep your eyes or head from moving, that itself could be tiring and drain your resources. So, the fatigue you feel after a long period of difficult listening might be partly from the mental effort and partly from the physical effort of staying still. What is really cool about this research is that it is opening up new questions. For instance, how coordinated is this movement suppression across our whole body? Do our eyes, head, and even our posture all become still together? And can we use these movement measures to tell us not just that someone is trying hard, but how they are trying hard? Scientists are still trying to figure out the exact brain mechanisms behind this stillness. Is it an active process of suppressing movement or a more passive relaxation? And does this stillness actually make the listening process itself less effortful over time? Or is maintaining that stillness a separate effort? They also want to know if these movement patterns are the same for everyone, or if they change depending on age, hearing ability, or even the environment. So, what is the big takeaway? Effortful listening isn't just a mental process. It is a physical one too. When we're really trying to understand challenging speech, our bodies tend to quiet down, and the stillness might be a crucial part of how we focus and process sound. It is a fascinating idea that links our auditory, cognitive, and motor systems together in a new way. Future research will hopefully tell us even more about how this perception-action dance helps us make sense of the world around us. If you found this exploration of listening effort and movement interesting, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more fascinating science. Let us know in the comments what other mind-bending topics you'd like us to explore. Thanks for watching.